as we could assess what we thought he might have committed. And we did that by, of course, looking at the totality of the evidence we had, but also he was an incessant note taker.
Through his meticulous record-taking, including the notes and the receipts he kept, agents were able to make a timeline of de Barteleben's travels. They also used the notes to better understand the type of person de Barteleben was.
He had lots of notes, handwritten notes that he wrote about himself, about how to make himself appear more presentable, more attractive to women, how to make himself appear more important, sitting in a bar, how he should sit, how he should look, what he should say, all of those kinds of things.
Special Agent Mertz discovered de Barteleben made lists of objectives.
He also wrote pages and pages of goals of what he wanted to do. The type of women he would like, the type of torture he wanted to inflict on women.
De Barteleben's to-do lists outlined how he would accomplish each thing. He wrote about equipping his car with a hinged license plate that could be flipped up or down from inside the car. Eye bolts on the floor of the vehicle and in the trunk. He made reminders to install soundproofing, security buzzers and alarms to his house. He wanted hidden compartments, a secret area where he could keep women locked up. De Barteleben had even outlined the most opportune time to kidnap a woman. The level of detail was chilling. Some of his notes were easily understood, while others seemed to have been written in code.
He had little initials like, KRK, those kinds of things, which in our mind we thought meant perhaps kidnap, rape, kill. And he had notes to himself about, first of all, he thought he was very smart and that cops were stupid and that he would never be caught because he was smarter than us.
As agents looked over the notes, they feared the photographs found in de Barteleben's lockers were proof he had acted on his plans. The agents found hundreds of photographs of nude women engaged in sadistic sex.
Several of them appeared they had been in some act of being bound up or had ligature marks. You could see bright red rings around their wrist.
De Barteleben appeared to have posed many of his victims. Some of the pictures appeared as if they had been taken over a period of days. The victims, all of them women, seemed to grow more disheveled and hollow-eyed with each shot. Investigators had no idea what had happened to these women. And de Barteleben refused to talk. The Secret Service was dealing with a sexual predator. They sought help from the Behavioral Sciences Unit at the FBI. They wanted to better understand their suspect.
We went to the Behavioral Science Unit to ask for their assistance, to see if they could provide any better insight as to what he may have done, so that we could be more informative to our officers who were liaisoning with law enforcement around the country.
Working out of Quantico, Virginia, the Behavioral Science Unit studied de Barteleben's notes, tapes, photos, and other souvenirs. Retired FBI Special Agent Roy Hazelwood is an expert in profiling the criminal mind.
The Secret Service obviously understood that de Barteleben was involved in sexually violent crimes. They understood that because of tape recordings they'd listened to. They understood it because of photographs that they had the opportunity to observe. They saw the fantastic amount of pornography this man had not only collected but had created himself, both verbal and in written form, as well as visual forms. So they knew that he was involved in sexual crimes. They were specifically interested in my input on the types of sexual crimes and a little bit more of what made de Barteleben tick.
Hazelwood looked into DeBartolaben's background for clues to his personality. He found that the counterfeiter had a criminal record.
I learned that at age 16 he was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. I learned that he was a very assaultive type of person, a very abusive person toward his parents, for example.
Hazelwood believed DeBartoleben was attracted to counterfeiting, partly because of the risk.
To be able to walk up to a person and con them out of real money and merchandise and give them phony money and walk away, and they can't identify you. Why? Because they're not paying any attention to you. You're just one of hundreds of customers that come in here and buy a pair of socks in a given day, you see? So the risk is also part of the thrill for him.
Hazelwood examined the notes DeBartoleben had written. The descriptions of torture pointed to an obsession with inflicting pain on women. Hazelwood concluded DeBartoleben was a sexual sadist.
A sexual sadist is an individual who is aroused by the suffering of another person. It is not the infliction of pain. The sexual sadist uses pain as a tool to elicit the suffering. The suffering is the goal.
If Hazelwood's assessment was accurate, hundreds of women may have suffered at the hands of DeBartoleben. His notes indicated he planned and outlined every aspect of his proposed crimes against women. In fact, every aspect of his life was devoted to his sadistic behavior.
He wanted to buy a house that had a basement with an incinerator and a sadistic play area. I mean, even buying a house, the type of car he had, it had to resemble a police car so he could stop somebody. The type of house he had so he could keep a woman in captivity. The money he had so that he could buy more materials that dealt with deviant sexuality. Every piece of the puzzle of his life went to making up this mosaic of sexually sadistic behavior. For example, the tape recordings. They were all geared to humiliation, degradation of his victims. That's certainly a characteristic of a sexual sadist. The photographs he took. The victims were nude, they were partially nude, they were forced to participate in sexual acts on themselves and on DeBartoleben. That's certainly consistent. The fact that he wrote extensively on his plans, he had goals in life, and a lot of those goals pertained to criminal activities. He talked about, for example, obtaining new identification. That's certainly consistent with a sexual sadist. So I'm going to say that the most important part of my analysis was that the documentation, he was in fact a sexual sadist.
Even the tools he used in counterfeiting became part of his sexually sadistic behavior.
The camera equipment, certainly used in counterfeiting, definitely used in his sexual crimes. Enlargers, certainly used in counterfeiting, definitely used in his sexual crimes. So there was some overlap between the two types of materials that I looked at. He collected newspaper clippings on various types of crimes. Bank robberies, drug arrests, rapes, homicides, scams, extortions, any type of crime. And he would clip out the articles that pertained to them, and he would learn from those.
After studying DeBartoleben's homemade pornography alongside the items found in the storage locker, Hazelwood confirmed the agent's fears that they had captured a sexual predator. What they still did not know were the extent of his crimes or the identities of his victims. The Secret Service was sifting through hundreds of pieces of evidence that all pointed to the fact that counterfeiter James Mitchell DeBartoleben had committed more sinister crimes. The FBI's Behavioral Sciences Unit confirmed the Secret Service was dealing with a sexual predator. Judging from the quantity of photos found in DeBartoleben's storage locker, he was a successful one. Agents knew sexual offenders often keep personal items from their victims as trophies. DeBartoleben had collected the driver's licenses of nearly 20 young women. The Secret Service set out to find them. Agents located the first woman.
Well, I was at this bar.
She was a college student who told them she noticed her license was missing after a man tried to pick her up in a bar. She described him as a little creepy. He was thin and in his late 30s. When she got home, she found the contents of her purse had been rearranged.
My purse was with me, right next to me.
The only thing that was missing was her license. She said she never saw the man again.
Next to me.
One by one, the agents located the other women.
He could have gone into it.
All 20 were alive. They all told similar stories. None of them had been attacked. Agents were perplexed. The evidence in the notes pointed to larger crimes. The stolen licenses and detailed descriptions of women and car license plate numbers indicated DeBartoleben went to great lengths to stalk women. The Secret Service couldn't find any victims. The agents couldn't quit searching. They had to do something with the information they found, especially the photos. They worried disseminating this evidence might violate the victim's privacy. Special Agent Vizeris felt the need for justice outweighed the risk.
One of the dilemmas of this case was that we had lots of photographs of nude women. And we didn't know if some of them were willing partners or not. It was clear from the photographs that a few of them were very young. Probably in their early teens. Some of them looked like they had been crying, so our presumption is that some of these women were clearly not willing.
The Secret Service put together a photo spread showing just the victims' faces. Special Agent Mertz assembled a synopsis with fingerprints, photos, and a list of crimes they believed DeBartoleben may have committed. They took all the information, along with the photo spread of victims, and sent it to law enforcement agencies around the country.
We tried to disseminate all this information to the police departments throughout the country to say, here's his MO, this is what he was doing. We think he recorded the rapes. We think he took pictures of his rape victims. He traveled in these states at these times based on the counterfeit note activity, based on the hotel receipts we found. Do any of the crimes in your particular police jurisdiction match this same MO?
They sent the information out. Now they would have to wait. It gave them time to take a closer look into DeBartoleben's past. Agent Vizeris learned the counterfeiter had been married 5 times.
We located all 5 women to try to determine if any of them were involved in the counterfeiting activity. That was our initial interest. But then secondly, we wanted to get as much intelligence from them as we could to figure out what kinds of crimes he had committed and where he was, so we could help make these cases.
They spoke with several of his wives. They found one of them, Mary Ann, living in North Carolina. She would testify later to a grand jury, all that she had told the agents. She began by telling them she met DeBartoleben in 1964. She said she was much younger than he was. He was nice-looking, well-dressed, sophisticated, and he flattered her. She had never met anyone like him. Journalist Stephen Michaud learned that when searching for a wife, DeBartoleben targeted a specific type of woman.
They were very innocent, they knew very little about the wider world, and they were easily manipulated. Another important factor is they tended not to be too terribly self-assured.
All right, now you're going to help me with this.
Marianne said that DeBartoleben gradually led her into posing nude for his camera.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's a business, it's a job. Just going to do it. I don't
He eventually took pictures of them both engaged in various sex acts, many of which were sadistic in nature. Special Agent Stevens characterizes DeBartoleben as a master manipulator.
We're going to make lots of money off this.
The trick that he would use with all of his